By providing a bridgehead for the Russian army's offensive in the northern regions of Ukraine, Belarus became a direct participant in Russia's war against Ukraine on February 24, 2022. After the counter-offensive of the Ukrainian armed forces in the spring of the same year, the Russian military retreated through the territory of Belarus. The wounded were treated in local hospitals. Massive shelling of Ukrainian cities from the territory of Belarus is also a fact. Despite this, Lukashenko has not yet given an order for the direct participation of Belarusian troops in Russia's war against Ukraine.
The main reason that prevents more active involvement of Belarus and its army in the war is in fact the mood of the Belarusian society, which obviously does not want involvement in the war, and obviously involvement of the army, which is against participation in the war, will hurt Lukashenko and Putin more than help them. Then, instead of receiving bonuses, Russia will have to spend additional efforts to stabilize the situation to keep Belarus in its orbit. Therefore, the Russians are currently using Lukashenko as a source of provocations, loud political statements, and trying to tie Belarus to themselves economically.
The rhetoric of the Belarusian dictator occasionally changes from statements about the desire for peace to words about the country's participation in the war. The media buzz is accompanied by a display of weapons. On May 21st, the second stage of joint exercises between Russia and Belarus began. The military are practicing the use of non-strategic nuclear weapons. Earlier, Lukashenko said that Russia had handed over to his country, quote, several dozen of most modern nuclear warheads.
So far, in fact, there are no definitive confirmations whether nuclear weapons are actually located on the territory of Belarus at all. But what is certain is that Lukashenko has no such nuclear button. It's one thing to place missiles somewhere, it's another thing to give a politician in another country the right to dispose of them. And I think the obvious reason why Putin doesn't give his nuclear weapons to anyone else is because he accumulates it for himself.
Experts also doubt the combat capability of the Belarusian army. The relatively small number of manpower and equipment inherited from the Soviet military-industrial complex is unlikely to allow for effective offensive operation. Analysts believe as long as mobilization has not been announced in Belarus, it makes no sense to talk about the state's direct participation in the war, experts say.
The issue is the readiness of the army and the armaments, as well as the number of personnel. Let me remind you what the Belarusian army is as of today. It is a total number of about 65,000 people with a 20% shortage of personnel, which exists and has not disappeared. And according to lists, about 45 to 47,000 of them are military personnel. The rest are civilian specialists.
Meanwhile, experts do not rule out provocations by Belarus against the neighboring NATO member states. One of the methods which Lukashenko had been willingly using since the spring of 2021 is the creation of an artificial migration crisis on the borders with Poland and the Baltic states. Reported by Anastasia Tarnavska, Larisa Petruk, UATV News.